Welcome back to Just Hear Me Out. Today I'm here with Demetra. Hey, girl.
Hey, girl, hey.
Now, before we get into our episode, I just wanted to touch on the fact that Demetra's first salon owner / friend is on The Golden Bachelorette.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about Pascal?
Oh my gosh. I actually haven't seen it yet, but my sister recorded it for me. But I did see like a few little snippets, and it's so on point because he is so hilarious. And I'm like so happy for him because honestly, I really think, even though I haven't seen it yet, I think he's making the show.
Yeah.
It seems really fun, and he's a hoot. He's a character. He always has been. And I think this is just right up his alley. So
I can't wait to watch it. I haven't watched it either.
Yeah.
I'm going to wait till like 3 or 4 episodes are out and binge.
See, that's what I want to do too.
Good stuff. So more to come on Pascal.
Yes.
So today I wanted to talk about this show, Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, is kind of like taken over. I mean, tons of people are watching this. I did just watch the whole thing. Demetra has not yet, but we will have more commentary later after she watches it.
Yes.
Just circle back and talk about it. But I want this episode to be what they left out of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives.
What do you mean they left it out?
There's a lot that I think is confusing if you're not Mormon because they don't explain everything. So the showrunners or producers or whatever, some mistakes they made and some kind of important lingo they've left out, like explaining what certain things mean.
So if someone hasn't watched the show yet, by you explaining it to us, would it be bad or would it be helpful that we know these things so then when we do watch it, it's going to be even better?
I think it's going to be really helpful.
Okay, cool. Fill us in, girlfriend. Fill us in.
Okay, let me just start with saying my situation. Both my parents are Mormon, so LDS, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that whole thing. So all of my extended family on both sides, way back, Mormon. And I was raised Mormon, but I grew up in the Chicago suburbs. And I say this because, especially among Mormons, it is different if you grew up anywhere except Utah. Utah Mormons are like just sort of on another level, like more devout. And I bring it up because a lot of people I know who are Mormon, like for example, 2,500 people in my high school, and there were probably like 10 people who are Mormon. So like people don't necessarily police you, but I think it's on steroids because you're in Utah. It's actually like 5% of the kids might not be Mormon or not know what it means to be Mormon because Utah is so Mormon, right? So if you were to break a rule in your demeanor, what you say, what you dress like, people would be pointing it out and judging you a lot faster. Whereas, where I grew up, it was a little more relaxed. So there's quite a sliding scale of Mormon devoutness, just like any other religion. So after high school, I did go to BYU in Provo for college. So I lived in Provo, Utah for 4 years. If anybody doesn't know, BYU stands for Brigham Young University. And that is a private school, and it's owned by the Mormon Church. And so because it's a private school, they can also do things like there's a very strict honor code that jives with the Mormon rules. And then also it's named after the second prophet of the Mormon Church, Brigham Young, who at the time I thought was like an amazing human. And now that I'm in my mid-40s, I realize he was actually a really horrible guy. Sorry, Grandma.
Horrible. I need to know why.
Like criminal. History can be really retold.
Okay.
He was the guy that took Mormons from Illinois to Utah and settled in Utah when there was nothing there. Okay. And one of the main reasons was because at the time, Utah was not a state in the United States. It was part of Mexico.
What?
And so it was legal. It was not illegal to marry several people. So the polygamy could be in full effect.
Oh, I see.
Yes. So
I think a lot, not against Mormons or anything, but like, I feel like a lot of people hide behind religion to do a lot of bad things in general.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
With that being said, go ahead.
And not to hate on polygamists. I mean, I think it is illegal for a reason. However, we're talking about like underage wives. Like to me, that's what's really gross.
Yes.
Like if you already have 30 wives and you need a 13-year-old, then you are sexually deviant and you have a problem,
yes.
in my opinion.
That's gross.
Okay.
He's a pedophile. Or not he,
So-
whoever is
Yeah.
looking for that.
So after college, I moved back to Chicago. And in my 20s, I was a little bit back and forth, back and forth. By the time I got to 30, I was incredibly devout Mormon. And I went through the temple. And I'll explain later what that really means, but that's basically taking it to another level. You're like
Okay.
the next tier up, serious Mormon. And that's where you get garments and things like that, if you know what those are. Like the underwear that's... Okay, you don't know. That's okay. So
Underwear. What?
special underwear. People who are not Mormon call them Jesus jammies. Okay, we'll get into that. Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on to that thought.
Yeah.
So, and just to sum up where I am currently, by my late 30s, I decided I cannot live this way. Long story. I don't want to tell my whole life story here, but I left the church. I actually formally left. When I say formally, it means like you can write a letter and ask them to take your name off their records. And most people do that because they don't want to be contacted, because part of the religion is recruiting people or converting, and also getting people back, like if they have strayed or become inactive.
Okay.
So when you do that, they're not allowed to keep sending people to try to get you to come back, because they mean well, but it's also kind of stalkery. And it's like, if you've decided, then they need to like respect you, right? So and at the time, I didn't think it was like not real. I did kind of think to myself, I don't believe that it's the only thing that's right. Because, you know, like a lot of religions act like they are the absolute only true thing and or a way to live, and everyone else is wrong. So I wasn't feeling that way, but I was a little confused about what I ultimately thought about like God and spirituality and everything. But I wasn't like, thinking it was awful. Flash forward 5 years after like being away from it for a while, and then also studying other groups and looking into old documentaries and being interested in that and the psychology behind it, I realized not only is it pretty culty, it is absolutely 100% totally made up. And I didn't really get that until a handful of years ago.
Wow. What made you think, like, because at some point, because you were old enough, so it wasn't like, oh, I was old enough to figure it out, because you were, pretty devout in your 30s.
Yeah.
But just to a couple of years ago, you're like, okay, this is bullshit. So
Yeah.
what do you think it was? Because it wasn't an age or a mature thing. What was that turning point for you?
I think I was just more open-minded, but you got to understand also, like, I was really questioning everything about life when I was a teenager, but we didn't have the internet. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's hard to get information.
Right.
Then by the time I'm in my 20s and like waffling back and forth, kind of a hallmark of a high control group is that the head of the Mormon church would always say that it's poisoning your mind against God to read literature that was anti-Mormon.
That's their way of keeping you right within, yeah.
Controlling the information.
Right.
So I would feel like it was kind of like sinful to actually like read it and look it up.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were brainwashed. You were
Yeah.
fully brainwashed, girl.
Well, especially when you grow up in something like that,
Seriously.
the indoctrination is wild. And I see a ton of similarities with Scientology.
I was actually just going to say that. For
Yeah.
some reason, when you were also saying earlier how, like, he went from Illinois to, like, Utah, and that's the first thing that kind of came to my mind was, like, Scientology.
I seriously really think that L. Ron Hubbard, the guy who started Scientology, I think he probably looked into what Joseph Smith did to start Mormonism.
Probably.
He probably studied him a bit.
I mean, you got to remember, like, being behind religion, there's, like, certain tax benefits. There's a lot of things you can get away with if you say something is a religion. And I think a lot of these are made up, honestly, to
Yeah.
benefit them for their everyday lives or whatever it is that they're trying to do illegally.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting to me is, I mean, you certainly don't know what's behind someone's intention. So I don't know if the people in charge of the Mormon church now are really that nefarious. But it's very clear to me that the people that started it absolutely knew it was complete bullshit and just, did it for their own reasons. Like created this group where they could control everybody.
Wow. And so you said you informally got out. Now, what about like your family? Would they be upset that you're talking about this or just being open about like you
I think
leaving?
Some people would be pretty upset.
Wow.
We'll see.
Okay.
I don't know that they all listen to this. So
Oh, okay.
there's
Might
that.
be a good thing. Okay. All right.
But I just feel strongly enough that, I don't even know what I think. I kind of joke about being an atheist. I'm just like in a phase where I feel like I've experienced religious trauma. And I'm not saying there isn't a God. I'm not saying there is a God. I have no idea. And I am also very science-minded. And it just blows my mind that I grew up and really thought that there were really like sci-fi stuff that was reality. Like there's a dude in the sky or something, or, if you pray hard enough, somebody's going to just like make something happen for you.
Yeah. I don't know. I find that a little hard to believe myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to explain that there's a Mormon prophet and it's like the Pope at the Vatican.
Okay.
So this dude will live in Salt Lake City, which is like the Vatican for Mormons. And, a lot of stuff is secretive. Like, we don't know how much that person is paid or what the benefits are. But, they are really behind this, religious figure. Like, you're not supposed to know anything about it.
Okay.
This is 2024 right now. There have been 17 prophets. So Joseph Smith was the first one. And when they die, another one is chosen.
Okay.
And it's just like the Pope, where I would say a bunch of white dudes get in a room and vote, but the people in there would say that God is inspiring them to choose somebody. So Brigham Young was the second prophet, is what I'm coming back to. But it's kind of like L. Ron Hubbard was an absolute narcissist, really scary dude, but there was kind of a limit to his wackaloon. So the next guy in charge, this Miscavige guy is in charge now because L. Ron Hubbard's dead. He is like arguably scarier and willing to do way worse things to continue the project, if you will.
Wow.
And that's really how Brigham Young was, to be honest with you. Yeah. Okay. Long story there. So the show Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, just to sum that up, it kind of reminds me of Real Housewives, but Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, the women are about the age that you would think of wives being. Whereas it is really normal in Utah to be married with a couple kids by the time you're 22.
Wow.
So these are girls between like 20 and I think 25, or maybe the oldest one is 30. But they're, they've lived a lot of life. They have kids. Some of them are divorced. And they call them sinners and saints. But the ones who are saints are more like the tier 2 Mormons, like the Temple Mormons. And the other ones are more like the Mormon Light, I would call it. So that's why this show has really taken off, because they're not really distinguishing between the two levels or belief systems or how far you're in, so to speak. And so all this scandal, like some of them are swingers.
Wait, what?
Which, this is a religion where you're not allowed to, they call it a sin to think about sex, before you're married.
So on this show, there's actual people that are swingers.
They talk about it, and they bring up
how
things.
Can sex be a sin if you have like 13 wives?
Oh, it's not a sin once you get married.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. I'm glad you clarified that.
This is what we would call purity culture, though, Demetra. So for somebody that grows up in a pretty strict religion, purity culture would refer to like, don't be sexual. Sex is a sin outside of marriage. A lot of them, including Mormonism, like it's a sin to masturbate, like ever. Wow. And so this is another thing. One of the girls, so they have this thing called mom talk, and it's not TALK, it's TOK.
Okay.
So it's a TikTok channel
Ah.
called Mom Talk, and they're all these Mormon girls. And they are at the point where they have a huge following. They also have often deals being presented to them for them to advertise something. And one of the girls gets a proposition for promoting a sex toy. So it's like a vibrator. And so she is like trying to justify it by saying, well, all I have to do is take a picture of me holding it and put it on my Instagram, and she'll get paid a lot of money. But at the same point, like, she's trying to justify it. Well, I could be using it with my husband. But technically, if you're Mormon, you're not ever supposed to be doing that sort of thing alone. So with purity culture, though, it's also a really tough thing. And women are taught, like, don't dress sexy because you're making men sin by what they're going to think when they look at you. So there's a lot of onus on the women. But then as soon as you get married, you're supposed to turn into a porn star and have sex whenever they want it. It's wild.
Okay, speaking of wild, and I am going to interrupt you really quick because speaking of sex and with your partner, right? Like, how far do you go and experiment? I was having a conversation with my client last week, and we were talking about, you know, just like what you do with your partner, and like, would you ever tell your partner, like, if their breath was stinky, right, and they wanted a kiss, or if their, you know, down there was stinky, would you tell them? And my client was like, would you? I don't know, the conversation came up, and I was like, absolutely, there's no way I can do it. And she's like, oh man, I'm bad. I'm like, why? She's like, because, you know, my husband literally wanted a BJ, and she goes, oh my God, it was so funky down there. And months, I swear to God. And she's like, but I still did it. And I was like, oh my God. And this is why you are married and I'm single.
No.
I was like, you go, girl. Now, she's a good wife. Thought it was really funny because she was like, oh my God, I could never say anything. I would feel like so bad. I'm sorry. Like, you're married. You should be able to just totally be like, God. Okay, I am not doing this because you stinky. You stanky.
That blows my mind, pun intended. Because also, like, by the time she realized it was a funky situation, if she said, go shower and come back, you know he would, and he would do it in 30 seconds.
He probably wouldn't. That's probably why she just sucked it up.
Ew.
I didn't mean like...
I know.
Oh my God, that was so funny. But we had a great laugh about it, though. It was a good laugh.
If he wouldn't, then that's his problem.
Yeah.
Here's my point, though. Like, if the roles were reversed, would he not be like, ooh, you need a shower first?
Right.
Okay. So back to Mormons.
Right.
So I gotta tell you, there are 3 different tiers of Mormons, and some Mormons don't even know that there's a 3rd tier of being a Mormon because it's like so secretive. So it's kind of like Scientology, where they get into Scientology, they're learning all these things, and then you don't know until later, once you've gotten to a certain point, then they like whip out the Xenu stuff, like how there's a warlord who's an alien. Have you not heard about this? Okay, so there's like a second level of
aliens
Scientology where, okay, we're gonna have to talk about Scientology on another episode.
Okay, I got to do my research.
But we will compare and contrast. Because, you know, there's stuff that they don't tell anybody until you're, you know the secret handshake and you're at the next tier. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
In all sorts of these different groups.
So it just seems very, like, inside, clubbish. I don't know. This does not sound like religion to me at all. But
a secretive inner circle, kind of like Nexium.
Right.
Anyway, so I wanted to explain one other thing. Mormons have what they call a meeting house. I don't think that's normal for religions. Meeting houses and temples. So a temple you'd go to any other time but Sunday. So Sunday is the Sabbath for Mormons, like most Christians. And then, but you go to a meeting house. And anyone can go to the meeting house. Anybody at all.
Like not even a non-Mormon?
Correct.
Okay.
So it's like a chapel. You would go there for Sunday meetings to listen to people talk, whatever. And that is Mormon Light. When you go to the next tier up, you go through the temple. So if you haven't, quote unquote, gone through the temple, you don't know what goes on in there. You're not supposed to talk about it. It's very secretive. And they call it sacred. Like, no one can know about it until they're ready.
Okay.
So the temples are for the 2nd tier and 3rd tier.
Okay.
And that's where Mormons get married. They have this thing called like an endowment. It's kind of like the initiation to the second tier, if you will. And those people would be considered super devout. If you go through the temple and then you then later leave the Mormon church, like myself, it's considered really, really bad. So I'm going to try to make this concise.
Okay.
Mormons are supposed to marry Mormons if you want to be devout.
Okay.
The goal is to get married in the temple.
Okay.
You can't go through the temple unless you're a devout Mormon.
Okay.
So if you are raised Mormon and you want to marry someone who is not Mormon, you can't get married in the temple.
Okay.
And that is, I mean, people do it. It's okay. But it's considered a big deal to not get married in the temple. And so in Mormon doctrine and thought, if you get married in the temple, it's for forever. And if you get married outside the temple, it's until you die. So in the language and everything, till death do us part.
Yeah.
That's not part of the Mormon temple marriage, partly because they have beliefs on like what happens after we die and life goes on even though your body isn't there. Whole long story. But it's a very big deal because you'd be married in the next life as well.
Okay.
So I had this interesting thought though recently because when they have this, special kind of marriage, it made it a lot easier for polygamy because even if a person could only have one wife, they could get married to multiple people in a temple and it's not a legal marriage. Like they can just keep marrying people, like spiritually marry them. So that's a way that polygamy could keep going and going without actually breaking the law. So,
wow.
For example, the people that are FLDS, which is that offshoot of the traditional Mormons, I don't know that they probably do marry their first wife, like legally, at a courthouse or whatever. But they have their own version of a temple, and they marry people. Like that's what Joseph Smith did in the beginning. He had a special temple, and he would bring women in. He would marry himself to them, and we're married. And sex is not a sin because you're married.
What?
Yeah.
And people fell for this, huh?
Yeah. So my whole life, I've been taught in this patriarchy that if you were to get divorced or say two people get married in the Mormon church, one of them dies. The woman is still connected to the man in the next life, but the man can have multiple women who are connected to him because of polygamy. Like the belief is that in the next life, there will be polygamy.
I'm just curious. Why did women a long time ago allow for men to be the higher one?
Indoctrination. But anyway, so there's this underlying patriarchy to everything, which is kind of hard to get over. So relating this back to Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, they have this really cool intro, right? And they're showing pictures of temples and not really meeting houses, but they're showing the inside of some places, and they're not actually the inside of Mormon churches. Mormon churches don't have crosses ever. It's a long story. Let's not get into that, but they don't use those at all.
Okay.
So any imaging with a cross is not a Mormon thing. And there's a lot of stained glass windows they're showing, which they don't have either.
So that's false advertisement or false, for the show?
Yeah.
Is a portion scripted or... it must be.
And
are these real Mormon people? Are these actually even real Mormon people?
No,
on the show?
I think they are Mormon people. It's just that the producers or the people running the show haven't done their research. And they probably have been denied from going into regular Mormon churches to take pictures.
Good point.
I would think.
Yeah.
And nobody.
That makes sense, actually.
Nobody can go into a Mormon temple who's not Mormon and devout. So even I think some of the people in this show have never been through the temple, but ones who are devout will be dressing a certain way, following a certain amount of rules.
But they're still on the show. Oh.
So
modern time, more. Sorry, I can't even speak. What now? I have so many things going through my head right now. Just thinking about this, it's wild.
It's wild. So, no crosses, and there are some Mormons who are legitimately Mormon, but they are the light version, and other ones are devout. So I feel like that's where the women are like trying to support each other and be good friends, but they keep, and it might be scripted for all I know, running into problems where some don't approve of some of the things the other ones are doing.
Oh,
Does that
because
make
they're
sense?
at different, because they're at different levels.
Yeah.
Some are devout, some are not. So they're not quite there yet. The ones that are devout are probably not in approval of what the other is doing, and which is probably causing conflict, which makes for a good show
Yeah.
for reality TV. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so when you go through the temple, you are given, I don't know a better way to describe it to a non-Mormon, but like undergarments, underwear, that is like essentially kind of like a t-shirt and biker shorts.
Okay.
And it dictates what you can wear, because they have to be under your clothes at all times, unless they have this saying with a bunch of S's: sex, shower, swim, and sweat. So if you're
What
going to
the
the gym,
fuck?
you don't have to wear your garments if you're like actually going to work out.
Okay, got it.
You obviously not for sex, not for a shower, but you're supposed to sleep in them. So it's like almost always you're wearing these. So if someone is showing their shoulders, they're not wearing them.
Ah.
So that's how women and men can be kind of judgy, because they can tell by what you're wearing if you're not wearing your garments. So the clothes would have to go to their knee, and there has to be at least a cap sleeve on a female.
Wow.
Yes.
But why? What is the reasoning for the garment? They feel that you need to be covered, your
I want to
privates
say,
or something? Or
I want to say it's partly like the purity culture, because it's supposed to remind you of what you promised in the temple.
okay,
And
all right,
like,
that's legit.
if
That
you were
seems
to get-
pretty,
yeah, and if you were to get undressed, you would see them and be reminded. So I think it's like, don't get jiggy with anybody who you're not married to for eternity.
even though you're not really married, it's through a spiritual. Just like I can say I'm married to you right now, but okay. I'm just saying. Show me your garment, lady.
But they still have the whole like obey your husband thing, and he's the head of household, and very patriarchal, very Victorian
Now,
values.
I have a question though on that. So, are these Mormon men? Are they like actual men? And when I say actual men, I mean like, because in today's society, I feel that men aren't really men. So I'm probably talking about a totally different subject, right? But you had said that like the man, you have to like obey the man. My question is he being a true man? Like, is he out there slaying, cutting wood for the fireplace? Is he the one that is providing? Is he, I mean, if you're going to obey someone, is he legit?
It doesn't matter. If he has a penis, he's in charge.
That's it. That's all you got to have.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
I had to say that.
Yes. So part of what we would call like religious trauma
Whew.
is they
I'm
have this.
I'm traumatized right now. I am already traumatized. Like,
So when there's a prophet, the prophet, what they say is to a Mormon person, like they have a direct line to God. So you can pray on your own and see what you feel like you're hearing back, or what an impression would be. But a prophet, it like trumps everything, which is just like a cult, right? They know more than you about. Yeah, and they're always old white men, okay, who are like, several steps behind in,
so when
modern
you say
times.
white, like, are they like white, like no Hispanics, no blacks, no Asian, no?
No,
So Mormon also is racist
technically, yeah.
in a
actually,
sense. I mean, I'm just saying, like,
in the Book of Mormon, it is very racist. The Book
it
of Mormon,
is, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And I used to really have a hard time understanding that until I realized that Joseph Smith just made it up. So there's that.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Yep. Made up religion.
So anyway, but these older dudes, their values are from like 50 years ago at all times, right? So when I was growing up, it was also a big thing. Like the prophet at the time decided, like you couldn't have more than one ear piercing. So if you had two, it was considered bad. And Joseph Smith didn't say anything about tattoos because I didn't have them back then in the 1800s
Okay.
that I know of. And so the prophet said, you can't have tattoos. You can't do this. You can't, so it keeps like evolving and sometimes in a positive way and sometimes in a negative way.
Sure. I mean, that makes sense. Things do have to evolve. So at least they're evolving, because there's a lot of other religions that don't evolve. They're very
Yeah.
set at a caveman mentality that just doesn't even make sense for today's world, right?
Yeah.
So at least they're evolving.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's like as harmful as it used to be, because I haven't been in it for a while. Mm-hmm. But let me tell you. So there was this prophet, and he wrote a book called "The Miracle of Forgiveness," and it was so hardcore and caused so much drama. I mean, it was like incredibly anti-gay. It basically said if you're a man and you masturbate, you're going to turn gay because of that. It said that sex outside of marriage is like one tier above the sin of murdering somebody. So you are almost as sinful as murdering someone if you have sex outside of marriage.
Wow. Something that should be a natural.
Right. And then just the amount of shame involved with all this stuff, and like you're not supposed to think about it. And I think with almost everything, like if you're told not to think about it, you think about it.
Right. Yeah.
Like
that's
if
true.
someone says to me, don't think about, Mrs. Fields' cookies. All I can see in my brain are cookies. Anyway, just saying.
Just made me hungry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
But you'll have to see this show. I feel like there's a lot I want to say, but I don't want to go too far ahead of myself. I want to
Okay.
know what your questions are. But, there's some language, some lingo that's kind of specific to Mormons. Like every group kind of has this, right?
Okay.
Where the language, when they talk about active or inactive, so someone would be inactive if they don't go to church every Sunday. Mm-hmm. So the active people are considered more devout and would also be told to try to get the inactive people back to church. So they would be befriending them. Young women's camp, girls' camp and young women's is like the structure of the church for girls. So like boys were always in like Boy Scouts.
Okay.
And girls were in young women's. So that's a term.
Okay.
And it comes up at one point. The baby blessing thing. At one point, someone's having a baby blessing. Uh-huh. So you know how in a lot of Christian religions, a baby gets baptized?
Right.
And they do some water stuff happening? Mm-hmm. So Mormons do baptism by total immersion when you're 8. Joseph Smith came up with that. Like you have to be 8 years old.
Okay.
And to make the choice whether or not you want to be Mormon. I don't know why 8 means something. Anyhow.
Interesting.
Because as we know, your brain hasn't finished growing until you're 25.
Right. So the 8 is a weird number.
Yeah. When it comes to like, I don't know, just the older I get and crankier I get, I'm like, why do people get married before they're 25 when your brain isn't done? And why do you have kids before you're 25?
Hello, because you're
I
not
don't know.
thinking. You're not fully developed to know any better. That's why people do it.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
So one of the women is having a baby blessing at church on the next Sunday, and some of the girls aren't invited because her husband feels like they're people who are not devout enough and doesn't want their energy there on the day that they're blessing the baby. So basically,
Drama on the show.
so in lieu of baptizing a baby, it's sort of like that in a sense because you have the baby at church and they're basically saying a prayer, a group of men, because they have priesthood and women don't, and blessing the baby and giving the baby an official name.
Wow.
And so it is wild that at a meeting house, I mean, I'm sure it happens all the time. So a regular chapel meeting house that you go to on Sunday where everyone is welcome, he would not want his wife's girlfriends to come if they sin to where he doesn't approve of it.
Okay.
So that is a tough spot to be in.
Yes. Sounds like it.
And last thing, one of the main girls is obviously not that Mormon. She does all sorts of things that you would not think a Mormon person does. But it doesn't mean she's not Mormon. She's just not. She's like Mormon light, and it's probably diluted with water as well. It's not like Diet Coke. It's like watered down.
Okay.
More power to her. She's all good. But she's telling her mom about she's now pregnant, and she's divorced and pregnant with her boyfriend.
Oh.
And her mom says, have you talked to your bishop? So that was something where I was like, they didn't explain what that means, though. So when you're Mormon, your meeting house, the chapel you go to, is according to where you live. Like, there's a
Okay.
lot of them. So, wherever you live, you have a certain building you go to.
Okay.
And then the bishop it is not a formal theologian or of any kind or priest or anything like that. It's a member of the group that
Okay.
is kind of like told that they're going to be in charge for a certain period of time. So they're in charge of that group. And that is who you confess your sins to. So she's wondering why her daughter hasn't gone and confessed to the bishop. And the reason you don't do that is because they can hold a meeting and have you excommunicated.
Oh,
Yeah.
this is very interesting stuff, Barbara.
And I personally have been to 3 of those where I wasn't sure if I was going to get kicked out.
You personally? Mm-hmm. You wild woman, you. Huh?
I'm too honest. Here's the thing. Some
Yeah.
people just lie. Some people lie. And like, if you're not really devout,
Yeah.
you don't mind even lying to go to the temple and then do your own thing. Unless somebody rats you out.
But that's like a lot of people. Like I said, they use the religion for people to think that they're this good person, but yet they're sinning. They have like 3 girlfriends, a wife, a baby mama, and they just robbed a fucking bank.
Yeah.
Oh, but I believe in God.
Yeah.
I'm a Christian, or I'm sorry. I think it's just a joke. I think it's
Yeah.
all a joke. So
Interesting times.
Yeah.
Last thing, I think I said last thing already. Sorry about that. Last thing, I wanted to explain to you that I'm trying to be like a little balanced here. So
Okay.
BYU, I felt like was a little stifling. I signed the honor code and then I did my own thing. So, like, for example, you are not allowed to drink alcohol ever.
okay.
And you sign a contract sign the honor code saying you're not going to lie, cheat, steal, you're not going to drink, you're not going to, have people of the opposite sex in your apartment, you're not going to have sex with people, all this stuff.
During college.
Yeah. So you
Okay.
can get kicked out for these things.
Okay.
Evicted from college. I don't know if it's true, but I told many times that even like after you graduate, they could take your degree away if you were found to be guilty of things. So,
Wow.
interesting fact. I was graduating. I graduated in the middle, like so it was like at Christmas time,
Sure.
And so my last semester of college, it was 9/11. And I happened to be at school. I remember I was in a computer lab and it was early in the morning in Utah. And when all of it actually started happening. Anyhow, long story short, as we all have our memories of where we were and what we were doing when 9/11 happened and we saw the towers come down in New York, a lot of people, I feel like, myself included, just sort of like sat back and were like, holy crap, like, what does this mean for life, for the world, for everything? I mean, it was like so unbelievable. And I wasn't worried for myself because I was in a college town in Utah, but I was actually worried for my family because they lived in Chicago. Because I was like, well, what's next,
Right.
Anyhow, I had a, no pun intended, come to Jesus moment. And I would say sometime in October, I actually went to my bishop and crying like a child and said, I just have to be honest. I'm supposed to graduate in a couple months. And for like the last couple years, I've been going out and drinking. So I like turned myself in. And I turned myself into the honor code office, which is where you go rat people out on campus. And
You rat yourself out.
and
Oh
this
my
guy
gosh.
I was like, hi, I'm here to report. So like, I didn't know what was happening. And they were like, okay. And I sit in a room with this person and they're like, get out the clipboard. And they're like, okay. And who is this regarding? And I was like, myself. And they're like, okay. And I told them.
What?
Anyway, I basically like told them everything I had done wrong against the honor code, which was technically nothing illegal, but like illegal to Mormons, right?
Right.
And the guy like made some notes, and he's like, okay. And I was kind of like, okay, what now? And he said, are you gonna stop? And I said, yeah. He's like, okay, that's it. And he's like, just sign here that
Shut up.
I was prepared to pack my bags and not get my diploma.
Well, thank goodness this guy was cool, because
I know.
And then it revoke it after the fact.
And I told my bishop too, and he was like, "Where are you going to stop doing those things?" And I was like, for sure.
Did you?
For a year or two, I don't remember.
Oh wow, that's a long time, because you graduated a couple months later and you still
Yeah,
stopped for a little bit. Okay.
yeah.
Look
Anyway.
at you. Okay, girl.
I'm just saying, like, it does seem really harsh, but here's the thing. If somebody else rats you out, you are in big trouble. I also remember, I can't
I
remember.
think it's because you brought yourself forward opposed to someone
Yeah.
else ratting you out. I think that's what helped your situation.
Yeah.
Make an assumption here, but that's what it sounds like. You're holding yourself accountable for that.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't want to be dishonest. I was like, what kind of person am I? I also felt bad because BYU was pretty hard to get into. And I thought, well, here I am, like, taking the spot that someone else would want who is really devout and, like, would really want to be there,
It's very honorable of you.
I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It is. It is.
Life's messy.
Yeah.
I remember while I was there, I can't remember what year I was in, but a football player got kicked out. And, there's plenty of football players in, like, college football who are just, like, they're not even, I mean, of course they're there for school, but they're there because of what they can do for your football team, right?
Right.
So there were a lot of non-Mormon guys who were at BYU just because they were on the football team. And so, like, sure, they'd sign the thing, but that wasn't their lifestyle,
Right.
So they could get ratted out. And
Wow.
I will say, I feel like people rat each other out because that's the culture. And you're kind of taught that, like, if you're not telling everything to your bishop and everything that you know about people sinning or whatever, that you are holding back. You're not being transparent. It's kind of like a sin of omission. You know what I
Sure.
mean? I just wanted to point that out because I don't mean to say, like, the person ratting you out is some, like, horrible piece of shit. But they feel like
right.
they're
But
obligated.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Sure.
Okay. So anyway, take this into your viewing of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. To be continued.
Yes.
All right.
Alrighty.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like and follow us. And we will see you next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.